The chandelier light danced across crystal goblets, but all I could see was the glowing phone screen in the center of the table. My sister's face filled it, laughing, radiant, leaning against my midnight pearl Lexus. The caption burned through me. "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for the amazing gift." The table went silent. My father's jaw tightened. My mother adjusted her pearls. And me? My chest felt like it was splitting in half. Because that wasn't their gift. That car was 18 months of my life, 80-hour weeks, sleepless nights, deals that nearly broke me. And now, she had stolen it, along with my voice, my pride, and even my story. I placed the phone face up on the table, my hand trembling but my voice steady. "We need to talk about boundaries. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt dismissed, betrayed, or made to feel invisible, or maybe you've experienced the deepest loneliness, or that unbearable pain of losing those you love most, share it. Leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because maybe the next story will remind you of your own strength." Sunday dinners at the Carter's house always looked perfect from the outside. The oak table gleamed under the chandelier, polished so often you could almost see your reflection in it. My mother's prized china, blue and white patterns she inherited from her own mother, lined each place setting with military precision. A pot roast sat steaming in the middle, the scent of garlic and rosemary filling the air, masking the tension that had simmered for decades. My father checked his watch for the third time, a habit as rehearsed as the way my mother circled the table, filling glasses with water no one asked for. She moved like a dancer trapped in choreography she had perfected years ago. Every gesture looked graceful, yet mechanical. I sat in my usual seat, my hands folded neatly in my lap, my chest tight. I've been showing up here every Sunday since my promotion, hoping maybe this week would be different. Hoping they might finally look at me and see more than obligation. More than the daughter who exists in Sophia's shadow. The silence was broken by the slam of the front door. Heels clicked against the hardwood, each step carrying the smug rhythm of someone who had never once paid the price of their choices. Sophia swept in, her hair catching the light as if even the chandelier adored her. She tossed her purse onto the sideboard, narrowly missing one of Mom's crystal bowls, and laughed, an airy sound that demanded the whole room adjust its heartbeat to hers. "Sorry I'm late," she said, dropping into the chair beside mine as if the evening had been waiting just for her. I forced a smile, but my stomach coiled tight. Every Sunday replayed the same story, my sacrifices dimming beside her chaos, my quiet diligence eclipsed by her effortless charm. Tonight, though, the weight of her keys, my keys, glinting on the table would make sure this dinner didn't follow the usual script. The conversation at the table carried on as if nothing had shifted, but my eyes stayed locked on the cobalt leather tag that dangled carelessly from Sophia's key ring. The little detail caught the chandelier's light like a signal flare. My key ring. My car. I set my fork down, the silver making a deliberate clink against the china. "Did you take my car?" I asked, my voice low, steady, the kind of tone that made colleagues sit straighter in boardrooms. Sophia rolled her eyes, twirling the keys around her finger before dropping them beside her glass. "Oh, please. You weren't even using it. It just sits in your garage most of the week." My stomach twisted. Just sits. That car was 18 months of 80-hour weeks. Late nights where I fell asleep on spreadsheets. Mornings where I forced myself awake with stale coffee. That car was proof, finally, that I wasn't living in anyone's shadow. "That's not an answer," I said, sharper this time. Father's face hardened as he leaned forward. "Family helps family, Olivia. Your sister needed reliable transportation for an important interview. The least you could do is support her." Support. That word tasted bitter. Hadn't I been supporting everyone my whole life? Tuition, rent, even Sophia's impulsive mistakes disguised as new starts. But here I was, once again expected to surrender what was mine. You could have asked me, I pressed, every syllable careful, controlled. Mother's smile tightened, polite but dismissive. Honestly, darling, it's not as if you were using it. The dismissal sliced deeper than I expected. I looked at Sophia, waiting for some flicker of remorse, but she was busy examining her nails as though this entire conversation were a mild inconvenience. Was it worth it? I asked softly. Taking without asking. Her lips curled. You're overreacting. I had an interview. And, by the way, the manager said I had excellent qualifications. Of course I did. Mother beamed, sliding a generous portion of roast onto Sophia's plate. We're just proud you made a good impression, sweetheart. Something cracked inside me then, sharp and final. How many times had I swallowed my anger? How many times had I played the dutiful daughter, hoping one day they would see me? Not tonight. Not anymore. I leaned back, folding my hands together, letting the silence stretch long enough to draw every pair of eyes back to me. You all think it's just a car, I whispered, steady but fierce. But it isn't. It's mine. And tonight, you're going to understand exactly what that means. The chandelier above flickered, the shadows deepening across the table. No one spoke. Sophia smirked, but her grip tightened slightly around her fork. For the first time in years, the script was slipping out of her hands, and into mine. The night air outside was cool, but my skin burned as I led Sophia into the driveway. Porch light spilled across the Lexus, and for a fleeting moment, the car looked untouched, sleek lines, flawless shine. Then my eyes caught it. A jagged scrape, almost a foot long, carved across the passenger door. Underneath the midnight pearl paint, a smear of bright red clung like a wound that refused to close. My breath caught in my throat. This isn't from a parking lot, I said, my voice like ice. This is from a fire hydrant. You sideswiped it, didn't you? Sophia's eyes darted away, her confidence faltering for a second before she masked it with a shrug. Does it matter? Insurance will cover it. My insurance, I shot back. The words cut sharper than I expected. Every month I pay those premiums. Every dollar earned from nights bent over contracts, weekends swallowed by deadlines. And here she was, tossing it all aside as if the car were a toy. Back inside, the pot roast still sat steaming on the table, but the air had shifted. I slid into my chair, my pulse still hammering. I reached for my phone, desperate for some anchor, and felt my blood run cold. 6 notifications from colleagues. 6 variations of the same message. Beautiful car. When did your parents buy it? Saw your sister's post, what a gift. Lucky to have that kind of support. My hands trembled as I unlocked the screen. And there it was, Sophia, posed beside my Lexus, her manicured hands splayed across the hood like she owned every inch of it. Her smile wide, her caption even wider. Thanks Mom and Dad for the amazing gift. #blessed #family support. 23 likes. 4 comments from mutual friends. My world tilted. I set the phone on the table, screen up, letting the truth glare under the chandelier's glow. Explain this. The room froze. Father waved a dismissive hand. It's just social media, Olivia. Don't be so sensitive. She only wants to feel successful like her big sister. My mother dabbed her mouth delicately with a napkin. Is that really so terrible? The dismissal stung, but beneath the sting was something darker, heavier, a slow, coiling fury I'd kept buried for years. My voice came out steady, low enough to force them all to lean in. That car isn't just metal and leather. It's the first thing I've ever owned that wasn't secondhand. The first thing I bought with money I earned. And now it's being paraded as someone else's gift. Sophia leaned back in her chair, twirling a carrot on her fork. Relax. Everyone already saw it. I'll delete it if it's that big of a deal, but what's the point now? Her casual tone made my skin burn. What's the point? The point is 18 months of sacrifice. The point is every promotion I clawed my way toward while she coasted. The point is that I've been erased, again. I leaned forward, my gaze fixed on her. Show me the scratch, I said. Sophia blinked. What? The scratch you mentioned. On my car. Show me. For the first time that evening, her smirk faltered. The chandelier's light seemed harsher now, throwing long shadows across her face. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence was its own weapon. And for the first time in years, I saw it, the flicker of fear in her eyes. The scrape on the car, the Instagram post, the hollow dismissal from my parents, each one pressed down like a weight. But it wasn't just tonight. It was years, decades, stacked one on top of another until I could hardly breathe. The clinking of silverware blurred into white noise as my mind drifted backward, carrying me to a version of myself I thought I'd buried. 17 years old. A letter from Stanford in my trembling hands, the word congratulations stamped in bold at the top. I remember standing in the kitchen, my heart racing, my throat tight with joy as I told my mother. She looked up briefly from arranging pink streamers for Sophia's sweet 16. That's nice, honey. Can you hang these in the living room? 2 hours later, my father rolled into the driveway with a red Volkswagen, the horn honking as Sophia squealed with delight. He dangled the keys like treasure, and she ran to him as if the car itself were a crown. My acceptance letter sat forgotten on the counter, the ink smudging from the condensation of a neglected glass of lemonade. The memory sharpened, another scene rushing in. College years. My hands blistered from hauling stacks of textbooks at the campus bookstore in the mornings. My apron stained with grease from waitressing at night. Tuition bills paid with scraped-together wages while my parents contributed $600 a semester, barely enough to cover the cost of books. Meanwhile, Sophia floated between 3 different universities, fully funded. Each time she quit, they comforted her. College isn't for everyone, Mom would say, stroking her hair as if failure were a tender bruise that needed coddling. And then there was the jewelry. The sweaters. The spare key to my first apartment that went missing right after Sophia visited. Each theft small enough to excuse, to overlook. Each one dismissed by my parents with the same refrain, she's your sister. Family shares. Family shares. My fists clenched around the edge of the table now, nails biting into my palms. No. Family takes. Family takes, and I'm the one expected to give until there's nothing left. The memories piled higher, pressing against my chest until it ached. I saw myself in the boardroom just 3 months ago, standing in my best charcoal suit, presenting the Miller contract. 8 men in suits doubted me at first, their eyes skeptical. But as I walked them through 18 months of strategy, their posture shifted. Skepticism softened into respect. By the time the final signature hit the page, $3.5 million secured, my boss clapped me on the back, saying, "You earned this, Carter." And I had. Every cent of the commission. Enough for me to walk into a dealership, breathe in the intoxicating smell of leather and newness, and choose something that was mine. Not borrowed. Not handed down. Not second-hand. Mine. The Lexus gleamed in the showroom under white fluorescent lights. Midnight Pearl, the salesman called it. But under certain shadows it looked almost black, a secret strength only I could see. Signing the papers, sliding into the driver's seat, I felt something I'd never felt before, freedom. And now, here I was, watching my sister twirl her fork like a queen while my parents defended her theft, as if my sacrifice was disposable. I inhaled slowly, tasting metal, fire, and years of silence. My voice, when it came, was steady but sharp enough to slice through the thick air of the dining room. "Do you even realize," I asked, staring directly at my parents, "that every achievement I've ever had disappeared in Sophia's shadow? That every milestone was swallowed by your celebration of her?" The room went still. Even Sophia's smirk faltered, just for a moment. And in that flicker, I saw it, fear. The scrape. The posts. The years of erasure pressing against my ribs like iron bars. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My fork clattered onto the china, the sound cutting through the dining room like a crack of thunder. "I'm done," I said. My voice was low at first, but it carried, sharp and undeniable. Every head snapped toward me. Father narrowed his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" I rose from my chair, palms flat against the table, leaning into the light of the chandelier. "It means I'm finished pretending this family dynamic is normal. I'm finished being erased." Mother's smile faltered, but she tried to regain control. "Darling, you're overreacting. It's only a car." "No," I snapped, louder this time. "It's never just a car. It was Stanford. It was my first apartment. It was every damn thing I worked for, every sacrifice I made, every achievement I earned, swept aside the second Sophia wanted attention." The words hung heavy, and I saw Sophia's smirk twitch into something sharper, defensive. "Oh, please. You've always been bitter. Admit it, you're jealous." My laugh was hollow, shaking. "Jealous? Do you want to know what jealousy looks like? Jealousy is watching your little sister get a brand new car for her sweet 16 while you're taping up her decorations because your scholarship letter didn't matter. Jealousy is paying your way through college while mom and dad bankrolled your endless dropouts. Jealousy is standing in a dealership, finally buying something of your own, only to have it stolen, scratched, and paraded online as if it were a gift from them." Sophia's fork stilled midair. Mother pressed her napkin to her lips, her face paling. Father's jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. I straightened, my chest heaving. "You think family helps family? Fine. Then tell me, when exactly did this family ever help me?" The silence that followed was suffocating. My parents' eyes darted to each other, a choreography as practiced as Sunday dinner itself. But this time, the script was mine. Sophia slammed her fork down. "You're unbelievable. You think you're so much better because you have a job, a title, a car? Newsflash, Olivia, you're still alone." Her words cut, but instead of wounding, they sparked something fierce inside me. Alone? Maybe. But at least everything I had was mine. I leaned across the table, my voice like a blade, "And for once, Sophia, you're going to face the consequences of taking from me." The chandelier above flickered, shadows rippling across their stunned faces. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small at this table. I felt dangerous. The dining room still vibrated with the echo of my words. My chest rose and fell, but inside, something unexpected happened. The fury, the years of humiliation, they shifted. What replaced them wasn't more rage. It was clarity. Cold, deliberate clarity. I sat back down slowly, folding my napkin with mechanical care. Sophia smirked again, convinced she'd won, that I had simply thrown another tantrum destined to be ignored. My parents avoided my eyes, waiting for me to shrink back into silence, to let the choreography of the Carter family continue unbroken. But not this time. That night, in the quiet of my downtown apartment, I paced the narrow stretch of living room floor. 8 steps one way. 8 back. The city lights bled through the windows, streaks of neon against the dark glass. My reflection followed me with each turn, tired eyes, clenched jaw, fists curled at my sides. On the desk, neatly aligned as always, sat plaques and awards. Regional sales leader, 3 years running. A framed photo shaking hands with the CEO after closing the Westridge account. Evidence of my worth that my family refused to acknowledge. I stopped in front of them, breathing hard. They will never see me. They will never respect me. So I'll stop asking for it. I pulled out my laptop, the glow illuminating the steel in my eyes. The answer had been sitting there all along, waiting for me to claim it. The next morning, I requested a private meeting with Howard Reynolds, the CFO of Carter and Associates. He'd respected me for years, quietly, consistently, because unlike my family, he saw numbers, results, strategy. He saw value. At precisely 10 o'clock, I slid a folder across his desk. Before we dive into quarterly numbers, Mr. Reynolds, I'd like to propose a solution to our transportation costs. He raised an eyebrow but opened the folder. Charts, spreadsheets, projections, all meticulously laid out. Mileage reimbursement totals. Maintenance costs for company vehicles. Tax advantages. Branding opportunities. You're suggesting we add a dedicated executive vehicle. His tone was measured, but I caught the flicker of intrigue in his eyes. For client meetings. Corporate events, I said evenly. We spend over $1,200 a month on reimbursements alone. A dedicated vehicle would cut that by 30% and double as a branding tool. Reynolds flipped to the final page. A photograph of my midnight pearl Lexus, mock-up logo positioned on the doors. And you happen to know of a suitable vehicle? His lips quirked upward. I do, I answered, meeting his gaze. Mine. A silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the office air conditioning. Then he leaned back, tapping the folder with one deliberate finger. I wondered when you'd make this kind of move, Carter. This saves money in the long run. Smart. Very smart. Relief and power surged through me in equal measure. Not the desperate, clawing relief of a daughter begging for approval, but the calm certainty of a strategist seizing control. 2 hours later, I walked out of legal with preliminary paperwork. By week's end, the Lexus would belong to the company. A fair price. Full tax benefits. Maintenance covered. And most importantly, completely beyond the reach of my family. As I stepped into the elevator, folder in hand, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. My posture was straighter. My eyes steadier. For the first time, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. I felt like the woman who had rewritten the rules. The following Sunday, the Carter house looked exactly as it always had, perfectly staged, suffocating in its predictability. The oak table gleamed, the pot roast steamed, and my mother's pearls caught the chandelier's glow as she moved around the table with her rehearsed grace. But this time, I didn't feel like a background character stepping onto their stage. This time, I had the script. I took my seat in silence, placing a leather folder neatly beside my plate. My father cleared his throat in that familiar, authoritative way, signaling his intention to direct the evening. Olivia, he began, folding his napkin across his lap, your sister's job search has been challenging. She needs reliable transportation to make the right impression. Since you work from home 3 days a week, it only makes sense that she... No, I said, calmly, before he could finish. The word cracked across the table like a whip. My mother's fork paused midway to her mouth. Sophia blinked, then tilted her head, lips curling into a mocking smile. Come on, Olivia. You don't even drive it that much. Don't be selfish. I let the silence stretch, then placed the folder in the center of the table and slid it toward them. The company's embossed seal gleamed under the light. What's this? My father asked, frowning. Proof, I replied. That car doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to Carter and Associates. The words fell into the room like stones dropped into deep water. For a moment, no one moved. Then Sophia snatched up the papers, scanning them with growing disbelief. This is insane. You can't just, what is this? You gave your car to your company. I transferred ownership, I said evenly. Insurance, maintenance, even that scratch on the passenger side, it's all covered now. The Lexus is a corporate asset, reserved for client meetings and business purposes. My mother's voice rose, shrill and wounded. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. With accusations and legal documents. I met her gaze, unflinching. With boundaries. My father's face flushed red, his voice tightening with fury. You've always been difficult, Olivia, but this is beyond disrespectful. Family comes first. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. Family does not mean theft. Family does not mean erasure. And family does not mean sacrificing everything I've earned so Sophia can play pretend. Sophia slammed the folder shut, her hands trembling. You've ruined my life. You know that. I needed that car. Her desperation cracked something in me, not pity, not guilt, but a strange kind of clarity. No, Sophia, I said softly. You needed consequences. And now, for the first time, you have them. The chandelier flickered, throwing jagged shadows across their faces. My mother pressed her napkin to her lips as tears spilled, her sobs sharp against the heavy silence. My father gripped the table so hard his knuckles turned white, but he had no words. For once, I wasn't the one silenced. I gathered the folder and tucked it back under my arm, rising from my chair with deliberate calm. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor, echoing through the dining room like a closing gavel. Behind me, Sophia's voice cracked, raw with disbelief. You can't do this. You can't just take away what's mine. I paused at the doorway, turning back just long enough to let the truth land. It was never yours. And with that, I left them sitting in stunned silence, the carefully rehearsed choreography of Sunday dinner finally shattered. The silence after my words felt cavernous, stretching wider than the polished oak table between us. My father's chest rose and fell, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. My mother's pearls trembled faintly against her collarbone as she dabbed at her eyes. And Sophia, her face was pale beneath the chandelier's glow, her mask of confidence slipping for the first time all evening. You planned this, she stammered, her voice higher than usual, brittle. She pushed the folder away as though it burned her fingers. You wanted to humiliate me. I remained standing in the doorway, the folder tucked under my arm like a shield. No, I said calmly. I wanted to protect myself. Sophia shot to her feet, her chair screeching against the hardwood. You don't understand. That car was my chance. The photos, the posts, people finally saw me as successful, not a screw-up. And you just, her voice cracked, splintering under the weight of panic. You stole that from me. The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I kept my voice steady. You can't steal what was never yours. Her hands shook as she grabbed a glass of water, then slammed it down hard enough to splash across the pristine tablecloth. I needed it, Olivia. For once in my life, I was ahead. People thought I mattered. Mother rushed to her side, clutching her hand like Sophia was a fragile child. Darling, breathe. Don't let her upset you. She's always been dramatic. Her voice softened into the same soothing tone I'd heard my whole life, the one that turned every Sophia disaster into a family emergency we all had to accommodate. I tightened my grip on the folder. Even now. Even after all this. They're still protecting her. Father's voice thundered across the table. This has gone far enough. Olivia, undo this nonsense immediately. Transfer the car back. Families do not treat each other like business contracts. I met his glare head on. Families also don't lie. They don't erase. They don't enable. His face flushed crimson, his authority crumbling into desperation. If you keep this up, maybe you don't belong in this family at all. The words should have cut deep, but instead, they landed hollow. I straightened my shoulders, feeling taller, steadier. Maybe I never did, I said softly. Sophia sobbed, her mascara streaking, her voice breaking into sharp, uneven breaths. You don't know what it's like to always be compared to you. To always feel like I'll never measure up. The confession hit me like a slap. For a moment, I saw her not as the golden child but as the girl who had been shielded so much she never learned to stand. But the sympathy was fleeting, because every time she stumbled, I had paid the price. I know exactly what it's like, I replied, my voice trembling with the weight of years. The difference is, I learned to stand anyway. Mother gasped, clutching Sophia tighter. How can you be so cruel? She's your sister. I let out a long breath. And I am your daughter. But you've never protected me the way you protect her. The chandelier flickered again, the shadows stretching long across the walls. The perfect choreography of Sunday dinner was collapsing, plates cold, food untouched, silence punctured by Sophia's broken sobs. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being smothered by denial. I was the one ripping it open. Monday morning, the office buzzed with the hum of keyboards and the murmur of voices, a rhythm I usually found comforting. Today, it felt like oxygen. Every good morning that greeted me in the hallway sounded like freedom. I strode toward my corner office, heels clicking against polished floors, the leather folder tucked securely under my arm. The same folder that had shattered the illusion of Sunday dinner. The same folder that now felt less like paperwork and more like armor. Olivia, Jessica from accounting called, waving from the break room, her smile easy and genuine. That car your company acquired. Gorgeous. My husband's been eyeing the same model. I smiled tightly. Not mine. Not hers. Ours. By the time I reached my office, I'd fielded 4 more comments from colleagues, compliments about the Lexus, nods of approval at my corporate resourcefulness. Each word stoked something inside me, not fury this time, but validation. At work, people didn't diminish my achievements, they amplified them. Carl, my assistant, appeared in the doorway, a tablet in hand. You've got Crawford at 10, the budget review. Should I block 30 extra minutes for your proposal? Yes, I said, straightening the stack of reports on my desk. Tell him I have a plan that will save us more than money. Carl raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Anything else? Clear my afternoon, I added, my voice steady. I want time to prepare the next phase. When the meeting came, I presented every figure, every projection, with surgical precision. Howard Crawford, the CFO, flipped through the pages, his brows lifting, then settling into quiet approval. So, he said at last, tapping the photograph of the Lexus with the company logo mock-up, you're suggesting we brand it, keep it exclusively for executive use. Yes, I replied evenly. It reduces costs, strengthens our image, and sets a precedent for smart asset management. We've been reactive. This move makes us proactive. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. Then, slowly, a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. You've always been strategic, Carter. But this is next-level thinking. You're not just saving money. You're creating value. The words warmed me in a place that had been frozen for years. My father dismissed me as difficult. My mother softened my anger into melodrama. But here, in this room, a man who measured everything in numbers and results looked at me and said value. 2 hours later, I walked out of legal again, preliminary paperwork signed, the deal finalized. By Wednesday, the scratch on the Lexus was repaired, the expense logged under routine maintenance. By Friday, The vehicle bore a sleek magnetic company logo, parked proudly in the reserved spot near the elevator, for client relations, executive use only. And on my desk, a new nameplate gleamed, Vice President of Client Relations. The promotion wasn't sudden, I had earned it for years. But the timing, the symbolism, felt like destiny correcting itself. That evening, I stood in my office, the Denver skyline painted orange and gold by the setting sun. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, shoulders squared, eyes steady. Down below, the Lexus shone beneath the fluorescent lights of the parking garage, no longer a fragile token of independence to be stolen or dismissed. Now it was a statement. At work, my sacrifices weren't invisible. My worth wasn't negotiable. My voice wasn't silenced. I pressed my palm flat against the cool glass, my heart pounding with something that felt dangerously close to hope. This is who I am when no one is trying to shrink me. This is who I've always been. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't asking for recognition. I was owning it. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and frying bacon, the kind of place where secrets felt out of place but always seemed to spill anyway. The vinyl booths were cracked at the seams, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. I slid into a corner booth, my leather bag set neatly beside me, my fingers drumming against the table as I waited. Then I saw her. My mother, pearls tucked beneath her sweater as though she thought casual clothes might disguise them. She moved cautiously, scanning the room like she wasn't sure she belonged here. For the first time in years, she looked small. "Olivia," she said softly, almost tentative. "Thank you for meeting me." I folded my hands, keeping my expression neutral. "You asked for just the two of us. So here I am." The waitress poured 2 cups of coffee, the steam curling between us. My mother added sugar and cream with practiced precision, as if routine might steady her trembling hands. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a flicker of a moment I thought I saw regret. "We didn't realize how much we hurt you," she said. Her voice wavered, but her eyes sought mine with a plea I'd never seen before. I let the words hang there, bitter and sweet all at once. "We didn't realize." 3 words that tried to shrink years of dismissal into a single excuse. "You realized," I said quietly, "you just didn't care." Her lips parted, shock flashing across her face. "That's not true." "It is." My voice sharpened, slicing through the hum of the diner. "When I got into Stanford, you told me to hang streamers for Sophia's party. When I bought my apartment, you let her walk out with my spare key. Every time I achieved something, you looked past me. And every time she failed, you cushioned her fall." Tears welled in her eyes. She needed us. She always. And I didn't. My laugh was low, brittle. "You thought I was strong enough to survive anything. Maybe I was. But being strong doesn't mean I didn't deserve your support." For a long moment, the only sound was the clink of dishes and the hiss of the kitchen grill. My mother's hands trembled around her cup. "I'm trying now," she whispered. "Can't that count for something?" I studied her face, the fine lines etched deeper than I remembered, the fatigue she tried to hide. For the first time, she looked less like the unshakable matriarch and more like a woman desperate to rewrite her story. "It can count," I said slowly, "if it's real. But reconciliation isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about acknowledging it, even when it's ugly. Especially then." Her tears slipped free, rolling down her cheeks. She reached across the table, her manicured fingers stopping just short of mine. "I want to try. I don't want to lose you." I let the silence stretch, the weight of decades pressing between us. Then, carefully, I pulled my hand back into my lap. "If you want me in your life, it has to be on my terms. Love isn't real without respect. Do you understand that?" Her shoulders sagged, and for once she didn't argue. She just nodded, slowly, as though the truth finally lodged itself where denial had lived for years. The waitress returned with the check, sliding it across the table. I reached for it instinctively, but this time my mother's hand moved faster. She tucked a 20 under the edge of the receipt, her lips pressing into something almost like a smile. "Dinner's on me," she murmured. It was small, clumsy, but for the first time in my life, it felt like she was trying to give instead of take. The first sign came in the form of whispers at work. Not mine, hers. Sophia's networking opportunities, the clubs and dinners she flaunted on Instagram, had dried up. One by one, the people who once liked her photos quietly moved on, and the doors she thought she was opening slammed shut. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I got a call I didn't expect. It was Sophia. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Olivia," she said, "can we talk?" We met in the same diner where I'd seen my mother. Sophia arrived late, as always, but this time there was no dramatic entrance. Her hair was pulled back hastily, her mascara smudged from crying. She slid into the booth across from me and stared at the chipped tabletop like it might offer her answers. "I lost my job," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "They said I wasn't reliable. That I didn't follow through. I didn't flinch. Were they wrong?" Her eyes filled, but she didn't deny it. "I don't know how to do this," she confessed. "I thought things would just work out. They always have." I leaned forward, folding my hands. "They always worked out because Mom and Dad caught you when you fell. But you never learned how to stand on your own." Her chin trembled. "You don't understand what it's like, always being compared to you. You're perfect. You succeed at everything. I've spent my whole life trying to catch up." The words should have stung, but they didn't. Instead, they revealed a truth I'd never considered. Sophia's entitlement wasn't just laziness, it was insecurity, covered with bravado. "I'm not perfect," I said quietly. "I fought for every inch. You think it came easy, but it didn't. I bled for it." She looked up then, her eyes raw, searching mine for something she'd never asked me for before, understanding. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "How do I start over?" For years, this was the moment I'd begged for, Sophia admitting her flaws, stripped of her confidence. But instead of triumph, I felt something different, resolve. "You start," I said firmly, "by taking responsibility. No more stealing. No more lies. And no more expecting me, or anyone, to clean up after you." She swallowed hard, nodding slowly, as though the words were heavier than she could lift. The waitress came with coffee, setting 2 mugs between us. Steam curled upward, blurring the space, softening the edges of the moment. "I can't promise we'll ever go back to what we were," I continued. "But if you're willing to put in the work, maybe we can build something new. Something real. No illusions. No borrowed cars or borrowed lives." Sophia's hands shook as she wrapped them around the mug. For once, she didn't argue. She didn't pout. She just nodded again, her silence louder than any denial she'd ever thrown my way. When we left the diner, she walked beside me instead of ahead. No heels clicking with false confidence. Just the quiet steps of someone who'd finally realized the world wasn't going to rearrange itself for her. For the first time in years, I didn't feel smaller in her presence. I didn't feel overshadowed. I felt equal. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something neither of us had ever known, balance. 6 months later, my office window framed the Denver skyline in shades of gold and crimson. The city pulsed below me, cars streaming like rivers of light, lives unfolding in hundreds of directions. And in the parking lot 12 floors down, the midnight pearl Lexus sat gleaming under the company's reserved sign. Not mine anymore, but somehow more securely mine than it had ever been. I ran my fingers along the edge of my new nameplate, Executive Vice President. The letters caught the last light of sunset, steady and unshakable. Behind me, laughter rippled through the office as my team clinked glasses over the launch of our newest campaign. No undercurrents, no dismissals. Just recognition. Value. Respect. Later that evening, I sat across from Linda at our favorite coffee shop, steam rising between us. She stirred her latte slowly, studying me with that look she reserved for when she thought I wasn't telling her everything. "So," she asked, "how's your family?" I thought about Sunday dinners, the choreography that had finally unraveled. My father's silence, my mother's hesitant texts, Sophia's tentative steps into a job she was actually trying to keep this time. "We're finding new ways to connect," I said at last. "On my terms." Linda smiled softly, lifting her cup. "That's progress." But the real progress wasn't theirs, it was mine. On the drive home, city lights flickered against the windshield as I thought back on everything: the scratch on the Lexus, the humiliating Instagram post, the childhood of overshadowed milestones. Every insult, every dismissal had cut deep, but those same wounds had carved the steel that carried me here. And for the first time, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt gratitude, not for what they'd done to me, but for what I'd learned in spite of it. Because here's the truth I wish I'd known sooner. Success isn't about what you own. It isn't about cars or titles or even promotions. Success is about boundaries, knowing where you end and someone else begins. Knowing when to say no. If you let people cross your lines long enough, they'll start to believe it's their right. And if you never defend those lines, you'll start to believe it too. But the day you finally stand firm, the day you stop apologizing for existing, that's the day you stop surviving and start living. I pulled into the garage, parking my old SUV in its familiar spot. The leather seat creaked, worn but comfortable, molding to me like an old friend. As I turned off the engine, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. No longer the daughter waiting to be seen. No longer the sister bending until she broke. I was Olivia Carter. And I finally owned my voice. Before heading inside, I picked up my phone and opened the Notes app. With deliberate keystrokes, I typed a message to myself, one I knew I would need to revisit on harder days. Love without respect is not love. Boundaries are not walls, they're the bridges to a life worth living. Then I looked straight at the camera in my mind, the one I'd always imagined hovering just beyond my family's judgment, just beyond my own fear, and I spoke to the people who needed to hear it most. If you're watching this, ask yourself, where have you been silenced? Where have you been erased? And what would happen if, just once, you said no? Because trust me, saying no might just be the first step to finally owning your life. The words lingered in the quiet night, sharp and true. And for the first time in 32 years, I felt free.